These are the 6 main AI tracking gimbals in the market today, and I'm gonna give you my view and opinion on how they compare to each other, because they promise to do the same but they do it very differently. And ultimately what matters most is not so much as to which one is the best overall, because none of them is perfect, but which one is the best for you based on your circumstances and the type of filming that you do. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about is restriction of movement, because to me that is the most important feature that you should be looking at when you're considering to buy a gimbal or upgrade to a newer gimbal. The first one that I'm going to talk about is the iSteadty V3, and this is a portable compact gimbal, and anything that applies to this gimbal applies to every other gimbal that is designed in exactly the same way, because they all more or less behave the same way. And this is a gimbal that has a lot of restrictions of movement. You are basically not gonna be able to do a shot going from the ground up. You can do it, but you either have to hold the gimbal sideways and then twist your wrist at the top, or turn it upside down and then do it in a very weird and awkward way. So yes, it can be done, but in a very unnatural way, and the results are not gonna be as good as with any of these 5 other gimbals. Now obviously this is a small compact gimbal, it packs within itself and you can put it in your rucksack. So if you know about the limitations and you are okay about them, this may be a good solution, although I don't think this is what I would call a main gimbal. Now we then have the Zhiyun Smooth 5S AI and the Hohem M6, and these are really 2 very good smartphone gimbals, and in my opinion they are the best smartphone gimbals in the market today. Both of them have an AI tracker, and none of these 2 are gonna give you any restrictions of movement whatsoever. We have then the MT2, the Feiyutech Scorp Mini 2 and the Scorp 2, and these 3 are hybrid gimbals. These are much more professional gimbals, so in that regard you're not gonna have any problem whatsoever. There might be a slight difference between the Feiyutech range of gimbals and the Hohem, because the Feiyutech gimbals have this handle which is built into the actual design of the gimbal, and in a way it makes it really easy to do underslang and do the sort of crane movement. The one thing that is really important is stabilisation. That is what really makes or breaks a gimbal. You want a gimbal because you want stable footage. Now, this is a compact gimbal, but it's actually really good. When it comes to the Hohem M6 and the Smooth 5S, I have to say to you, the stabilization of this gimbal is really good, and in my opinion is superior to the M6. Okay, Zhiyun has a tradition to make really good gimbals, and for a reason. In that regard, when it comes to stabilization, the Zhiyun Smooth 5S is fantastic. Now, when it comes to the hybrid gimbals, you got the MT2 and the Feiyutech gimbals. If I was to choose one gimbal purely for the stabilization, the Scorp Mini 2, in my opinion, is just amazing when it comes to stabilization, both for a camera and a smartphone. As you can clearly see, there is a difference in size. So obviously, if what you do is a smartphone only, the Smooth 5S AI in terms of stabilization is probably all you're ever gonna need. If you're gonna do something that is sometimes a camera and sometimes a smartphone, the Scorp Mini 2, when it comes to stabilization, I think is a very good choice. And if filming for social media and YouTube is something that you're interested and you're looking into, I have a free ebook that is literally about filming and shooting YouTube videos, and I give you everything that you need to do with color images and breakdown of equipment and suggestions. So if that's something that you want, it's totally free. I'll leave a link in the video description. I think it would be a really good companion to work with these gimbals. When it comes to using these gimbals with third-party apps, this is something that you can use with any of these 6 gimbals, okay? Anything that you want to control, you can do it on the gimbal itself, and you can use whichever third-party app you like to use. Personally, the way I use these gimbals is I use the app to set up maybe the speed of the motors, the joystick, and how fast or slow I want certain things to work, and then the rest I do it on my third-party camera app. And all I really need the gimbal is to change the mode, and if they have a built-in light, to turn it on and off and adjust intensity. And in that regard, any of these gimbals will do. That's how I use these gimbals, which may be different than you. And obviously they all have slightly different features that you can turn on and off. And I'm not really gonna go into each individual feature here. The bottom line is that when it comes to manual adjustments, working with third-party apps, these two gimbals behave very similar. Now, when it comes to the MT2 and the Feiyutech gimbals, obviously these are a whole different game altogether, because the difference is that these three also allow for using cameras, mirrorless cameras, and that's the big difference, because the Feiyutech gimbals allow you to control any aspect of the camera with this LCD, and this is such a joy. They have an amazing layout. It works really, really well. The MT2, it's a gimbal that to me feels first generation. It's a great gimbal, but obviously it doesn't have anywhere near as close functionality when it comes to adjustments and screen layouts and menu layouts as the Feiyutech, because this feels, well, actually the gimbal in its body is exactly the same as the M6. They just changed the motors inside, and obviously they give you a different setup for cameras, but there is no a physical difference. And obviously this is a very small LCD with extremely limited functionality compared to the Feiyutech gimbals. So in that regard, manual adjustments for cameras on the MT2 is not the strength, to be honest with you. And really and truly, when it comes to manual adjustments, everything needs to be put in perspective. Once you set up your gimbal to your liking, that's it. You are most likely not gonna touch that gimbal and do adjustments halfway through a shot. I mean, maybe there is one instance or occasion where you may need to do an adjustment on the fly, but my experience using gimbals for nearly a decade now is I don't think I've ever needed to do an adjustment on the fly. Now, the thing that makes these gimbals very different to each other is the AI sensor or the AI tracking, because even though they all have it, they do it very differently. For instance, starting with the iSteadty V3, okay? This is an AI tracking gimbal, again, portable gimbal for smartphones, but the great thing about this gimbal is that you have this detachable control unit that becomes a remote, because a lot of the times these gimbals, they lock on your eyes or they lock on your head, and you are in the middle of the frame and you end up with a huge amount of headroom above your head, and then you need to zoom in post and you start to degrade the image. Whereas here you can set up your shot, and then if you feel that you have too much headroom, you can just tilt up and down, or well, essentially control everything from the gimbal itself. That's really nice. But let's be clear on one thing. In any of these 6 gimbals, the AI tracking is really good, okay? What I'm telling you here is the differences or the nuances when it comes to fine detail or fine adjustments. Now, what is great about the M6 and the MT2 is that you have a little remote control that you can buy, and this will allow you to do exactly the same thing that you have on the V3. And obviously, any of these gimbals allow you to use the AI tracker with your preferred third-party app, which is great because you don't need to rely on the actual camera app to do the tracking. The Feiyutech gimbals are really good. The AI tracking is spot on. It's really smooth. The only downside is that you don't have a remote control, and I cannot stress how helpful this is. There is a difference between tracking with a smartphone and tracking with a camera, okay? And in my opinion, I prefer to track with a camera than to do with a smartphone. And it has nothing to do with the actual tracker, because they all track really well. The big difference is, in my opinion, when it comes to monitoring what it is that you're doing. Because with a smartphone, unless you have an app that does remote monitoring, or if you are on an iPhone, maybe if you have an iWatch or an Apple Watch and you get like a little remote preview. But for most people, that's not gonna be the case. And you're gonna be looking at the lens and you have no way of knowing exactly what kind of shot you're doing. Whereas if you use any of these gimbals with a mirrorless compact camera, even though it's a heavier setup, and arguably it's gonna take you an extra 30 seconds or 45 seconds to set it all up, not that much longer anyway, you can flip out the monitor and that way you get a preview of what it is that you're doing. So even though it's a slightly heavier setup, in terms of functionality, it's actually better. Now, obviously, this all comes down to what equipment you have on hand. If all you do is smartphone filmmaking, these gimbals don't make any sense. You want one of these gimbals. And when it comes to the user experience, obviously, these are extremely different gimbals and very different user experience. Obviously, this is a compact gimbal. It's never gonna do what these gimbals do, but if you understand that, it's probably gonna be okay. Being honest with you, I can't say that there is one gimbal that has a bad or a negative user experience. You need to understand the type of gimbal that you have and what the expectations are, because it's not the same to be using this gimbal than it is to be using this gimbal. But again, the person that is using this gimbal has very different expectations than the person that is using a gimbal like this, and vice versa. When it comes to smartphones, if you're looking for a gimbal that can handle a higher payload, you're gonna be looking at the Smooth 5S and the M6, because they have a higher payload than this portable one, which is basically a smartphone and a filter. If you try to put a lens, it's not gonna handle it. And the same applies with these three gimbals, with the Scorp 2 having the higher payload because it's physically a larger gimbal than the MT2. The Scorp 2 will give you a higher payload and a bit more range, but if you're looking at the sort of a mid-range or a small range, 16 to 35mm type of lens or any lightweight lens, I think the Scorp Mini 2 and the MT2 are great gimbals. It all comes down to what it is that you want to film and how. Because if you want a lightweight portable gimbal and you don't use a lot of lenses, then the iSteadty V3 is a really nice gimbal. You just need to understand, this is very important, okay, that this gimbal has restriction of movement. So if you want to do a shot from the ground up or going up down to the ground, and believe me, those are really amazing looking shots, this gimbal is a pain in the rear compared to the Smooth 5S and the Hohem M6. When it comes to functionality and no restriction of movement, these two gimbals are fantastic. Now, if you are the kind of person that films with a smartphone and you want a gimbal that has great stabilization and that is what you want above anything else, the 5S AI is a better gimbal than the M6. If on the other hand you are a content creator that wants a gimbal that has a good, decent stabilization, but primarily you're gonna be using the AI tracker and you want the functionality of having a remote control, I think the M6 is the way to go. And I have to stress this, okay? The AI tracking gimbal on any of these gimbals is very good. It just comes down to little details like remote control. And something similar applies with these larger gimbals, okay? If you are the kind of person that is gonna be filming with mirrorless cameras mostly, and you're looking at higher payloads, well, the Scorp 2 is the way to go. This is a fantastic gimbal. If you are the kind of person that does compact mirrorless cameras with lightweight lenses and you want a gimbal that maybe double up with a smartphone, but primarily you want a gimbal that has amazing stabilization, this is the way to go. The Scorp Mini 2, no questions asked. And I love the Hohem gimbals. I genuinely love, but I have to be honest with you. The stabilization on the Scorp Mini 2 is, in my opinion, amazing, okay? you are gonna absolutely love the stabilization that you get both on the camera and on the smartphone. It doesn't mean that the MT2 doesn't have good stabilization, because it has really decent stabilization, but the Feiyutech gimbal is on another level. Okay, now when it comes to the AI tracker, any of these three gimbals, the AI tracker locks on your head and it won't let go, and it's really reliable. Now, in my opinion, if that is what you want primarily, I think the MT2 still has the advantage. I use this gimbal so much for AI tracking because of this remote control. You cannot underestimate how helpful it is to have a remote control when it comes to filming yourself, because any of these gimbals, you can flip the screen and then you see yourself. But the difference is that, let's say that you're doing something that requires you to be, I don't know, 5-10 meters away. With this remote control, you can adjust the tilting range, or whether you want to be slightly to the right or slightly to the left. You can tell the gimbal to stop, you position yourself, you tell the gimbal exactly where you're gonna be, and then you reset, and that's it. That the gimbal knows where you are. If you don't have a remote control, you have to then walk towards the gimbal and try to position yourself to one side, and then you need to then walk back, and the gimbal is never going to give you the same accurate movement as you can with the Hohem. So in that regard, I think if you want a gimbal primarily for the AI tracking with some decent and good stabilization, the Hohem MT2 is the way to go. And I hope that you genuinely enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.